All right. Well, thank you all for joining me around this wonderful topic of all things meetings. It is one that most people, you either kind of love your meetings usually, or you despise them, or they bring up a lot of emotion. We'll say that. So I heard this quote recently, and I'm curious if you guys agree. It says, no action, activity, or process is more central to a healthy organization than the meeting. So agree, disagree. That's a little food for thought for your day. Um, but the more I think about it and the more that I work with teams, the more I really find this to be true, that a company's culture truly lives and dies by its meetings. Because if you've ever been a part of a bad meetings foster discord, disconnection, discontentment. The great meetings you're a part of, you feel connected, cohesive, you have the clarity, the communication, and naturally you get better results, faster results, you're more efficient and more effective. And I find that often when I go in to work with teams, it's often either kind of feast or famine when I first am meeting with a team where I go in and there's either a ton of meetings and somehow not much of anything is getting done. There's just lots of talk and discussion, or it's kind of the other end of that where it's just kind of famine and there's no meetings. And at the same token, people are wondering, not surprisingly, why things aren't getting done. And so in this kind of webinar, I'm having this be more of a evaluations of your meeting, giving you some questions, giving you some things to think through on how to really make the most of your meetings. Because again, it really is where I find the culture of a team is really cultivated. And it's either kind of birthed in meetings or it just begins to fall apart in meetings. And so as you can know, they are very important. So the first three questions I'm going to give you that I want you to kind of sit with, ponder, whether it's today, now, beyond today, go ask your team these questions. So just three questions off the bat. The first is, what meeting on your calendar do you currently enjoy the most and why? So think about your meetings, think about who you meet with, what you talk about, which meeting is you do you find the most life from, do you get the most energy from, and why? Okay, second question. Describe the majority of your meetings in three descriptive words. So three specific words. How would you describe the majority of your meetings? Hopefully not things like boring, wasteful, uh, inefficient, hopefully it's the opposite of those. But how would you describe the majority of them? And then lastly, if you had to or got to cancel one meeting entirely, it's like a genie in a bottle, and this was the wish, never to be on your calendar again, what meeting would you cancel and why? So usually the one you enjoy the most and the one you want to cancel are the ones that people usually have right away. Like, oh, it's this, with, my boss or so and so. And because again, if meetings are the birthplace of culture and kind of that like quote of how you feel when you wake up on Monday morning is kind of how you feel about your work, meetings are where all of that takes place. And so when we think about, oftentimes we go into, and we can definitely get into all that, and I can send you some great resources around the agendas and how to create an effective meeting and all that good tactical items. Like those are great and necessary and important. But also at the same time, very important is how you feel when you show up to a meeting, how you feel when you walk away from a meeting, because we definitely, you've heard it maybe said, and you've probably been a part of it. It's like the meeting after the meeting. We're trying to get away from those meetings after the meeting where you're having effective, efficient, engaged meetings with the people that you're supposed to be meeting with, you should be meeting with, and everything kind of goes from there. So meetings truly are that place where I find trust grows, where communication begins to actually happen effectively, efficiently, and a team begins to truly emerge out of these meetings. So anyone want to even throw in the chat any great revelations from those three questions or any thoughts from there? Otherwise, we'll keep moving. Don't be shy. All right, we'll keep it moving. So that's some good, just kind of food for thought there to think about. And then the next kind of piece I'm going to move into is before you even schedule a meeting, I want you to think on these, what I call the fundamentals of meeting. And these might seem very like elementary to you. They might seem like, okay, really? Like that's what we're going through. But yes, because I've worked with enough teams and I have a job because of a lot of these people issues that it really often comes down to the basics, the fundamentals, are the right people in the room, are the necessary people in the room, all that good stuff. So before you schedule a meeting, and I highly recommend, I had a team just do this recently where at the start of every year, they clear the whole calendar. They just delete all the reoccurring meetings and they start afresh and they say, okay, who do I need to be meeting with? What meetings should we actually put on the calendar? And I absolutely love that idea. If, highly recommend to do that with you and your teams and any meetings you can to just simply scratch your whole calendar and to reevaluate and to say, are we actually, having the best time, kind of effectiveness for who we want to meet with and what we want to do. And so these kind of tactical things are things to think through as you kind of create your meeting schedule. So the first thing is, do you even want to be at the meeting? So there, of course, might be times where you kind of have to have a meeting or you have to have a reoccurring meeting to work through a problem, whatever it might be. You may not even want to be there. I get it. We all have parts of our job that aren't fun, we don't want to be a part of. But there's also times when I've met with leaders when they're like, I hate this meeting. And I'm like, so cancel it, right? So, and they're like, I guess I could, which isn't always the case. You don't always have that permission, but you might have kind of the permission or the ability to speak up and say, hey, is this actually effective? So that's a good kind of check in with yourself right out of the gate. So the next pieces of the kind of fundamentals of meetings are basically the why, the who, the what, the where, the when, the how. We learned it in elementary school. You just go through them all. And I'm going to go through them again just to kind of remind you of, wait, what are those meetings that I have? Am I getting the most kind of bang for my buck and the time that I have with the people in those meetings? Does anything need to be tweaked, etc.? So if you want to kind of think of a particular meeting, maybe that you feel like isn't effective, isn't efficient, kind of drives you mad, was on your list of like meeting I want to cancel the most, this might be a good thing to kind of think through. So the first and very most important piece is why. Why are you having this meeting? What purpose is it serving? Why is it connected to the larger goal? Like this happened to me yesterday where my life insurance agent called me and he's like, we need to schedule a 15-minute meeting to go over your plan. And right away, I'm thinking, why? I'm happy with my plan. you're just trying to sell me money, like, right, your mind automatically goes to, why is my boss asking me for a meeting, right? We go to worst case scenarios. So to be very clear, set those expectations of why is this important? Why is this necessary? Why is it, good for you to be in this as well? And then, of course, is the who. Who should be attending the meeting? Are the right people in the meeting? Are too many people in the meeting? So good structure to kind of remember is, I would say, 5 or less people. You have that intimate space where you can really dialogue, you can pull from people. It's not too crowded. Most of the time, everybody kind of gets a chance to share. 5, I find, to 12. Even then the agenda of the meeting should probably be adjusted, where maybe not everybody will get time to share. Some people, your introverts, are going to feel more at privileged to kind of just hide in the corner or Zoom or whatever. 12 or more, I find, is definitely more of should be probably a presenting style, where it's 1 or 2 people leading the meeting, maybe pulling people out for clarification or to share. But to know that is very important, the number of people. So that's often one that gets missed. That might be worth evaluating as well. And then moving on to the what, and this is where also I see a lot can be usually improved upon, is what is the purpose, the context, agenda. Are we tackling in this meeting KPIs, your performance indicators? Are there metrics we need to be going over, kind of numbers? Is this more of we're just brainstorming, so we don't need to come with this kind of set preparation? Because you've all been a part of those meetings where, oh my gosh, this could have been an email, or oh my gosh, this could have been, if you would have sent me these 2 questions before, I would have came prepared, and now we don't have to have another meeting. And this is truly on the leader of the meeting. There should be one designated kind of leader, champion of the meeting, that's setting the agenda. This is what's expected. So there's it's high in intention, unless, it's described otherwise of, hey, I just want you to come, brainstorming session, whatever it might be. And then, of course, and this is often can be the toughest, is when, how frequently are you meeting? How often? Too much, not enough. And that one, I would say, what often I see happens is you get this kind of reoccurring meeting on the schedule, and then all of a sudden, a year later, both people or everybody's probably complaining, like, oh, we meet all the time, we don't even talk about nothing. And so usually I find meetings that often maybe say are every other week, maybe 6 months in, could be once a month. Now, not always, and again, it depends on the meetings, but that's, again, if you're the champion of the meeting, every couple months, I would highly encourage you to kind of reevaluate with yourself, with the team, to say, is this too much? Is this not enough? Because often I just see we're creatures of habit. And so we might even be thinking, this doesn't need to be happen this much, but it's just always on the calendar, and we don't take the time to adjust it. Because then that last piece, potentially the most kind of important, all-encompassing, is the how. How do you feel when you show up to these meetings? How do you feel when you walk away from these meetings? How do you feel as maybe the leader or the participant? How do you feel around the topics that are discussed? And so this is the heartbeat, I'd say, of where culture is really kind of fostered in these meetings, is taking a check-in of, why does she always kind of come down on me for that? Or why do I always feel like she's, poking at me when she's saying these things? Whatever it might be, this is often, you might do all those other things right, but in the heartbeat of the meeting, communication, personalities clash. And that's actually maybe what you need to dig into regarding the meeting. So those are kind of my meeting fundamentals that are often good places to start with, evaluate. Please, any thoughts, questions, disagreements, things you'd add in, throw those in the comments. Because often if you can tackle these things really well, it really everything kind of flows from there. Not to say it's easy or simple or all the things, but a starting place all the same. The other thing that's really important is within the what, and I'm going to send you all a kind of structure. If you want to really dive into meetings, a great book that a lot of the structure and the content around great meetings it's called Death by Meeting by Patrick Lencioni. And it's a great, easy read. Does a good job of kind of laying out these fundamentals as well as a few other tips and tricks. Highly recommend that. But one thing he dives into that I'll share with you all is the types of meetings. So he recommends to have daily check-ins with your team, no more than 5 minutes, weekly tactical meetings, kind of 45 to an hour and a half, monthly strategic meetings, which are your more bigger 2 to 4 hours, and then quarterly big discussions, 1 to 2 days type of things. And each of those has a very specific agenda and purpose. And so again, you don't have to follow that to a T, but it gives you kind of a good framework that I'll send out as well. So a few more, 5 questions. Again, I said this is going to be a webinar that's more, let's evaluate, first of the year, let's have an evaluation on your meetings and just kind of do your own kind of deep dive of what's working, what's not. So these are 5 questions I liked people to think through in regards to if you're about to attend a meeting, if you're frustrated with one of your meetings, if you kind of can't quite maybe pinpoint why a meeting is frustrating, if you're a leader of a meeting. Anyway, these 5 questions are good things that I think build trust, vulnerability, the kind of foundations of great teams. So the first one, and I can send these out too, but the first one is, how can this meeting build greater connection with my team? If connection is key, and it is, to building that trust, to focusing on that connection with the team, what and how can I do within this meeting to build that connection? Because if you do the what, why, how, where, when, all those things perfectly, it might feel a bit like robotic. It might feel a bit like we're just going through the motions here. Versus we want to still have that connection. We want to still have them feel and walk away with greater vision, better clarity, a greater sense of connection with you. So that's the first one to think through. The next one close to that is, how can I build greater unity as a team? Not only connection with each other, but is there maybe some discord? Is there something that can bring us together, greater unity? Maybe it's like at the first 5 or 10 minutes, you do more of a interactive catch up, how are you kind of thing. But that connection and unity piece is great to think about. The next one is, how can I really hear and listen to my team's needs? Because again, you're kind of setting up the meeting, you're doing everything, you're going through the tasks, the projects, all the things that need to get focused. And often what can get missed is, wait, am I actually listening to the people around me? When I walked away, often what are we thinking? Like, oh, how did I sound? Oh, how did I come across? Not often so much of like, oh man, that's interesting what Tom said. Like, He seemed a bit off. I wonder if Tom's doing okay, but are you actually also truly tuned in to the people around you? Is key, obviously, for building that connection. And then four is, am I really struggling? And do I need to be open and honest and share this with the team? Because how often do we maybe feel like, hey, I need to speak up. I don't get this. I don't understand. I got a pile of priorities over here, and they're all supposed to be my number one priorities, but I don't have time for all of these, right? So, is there something real, honest, vulnerable you need to say that the team might need to hear? And then lastly, to say, I failed, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. And especially if you're the leader of the team, and not to say you're going to mess up and make mistakes all the time, but that is something that you probably do make a mistake or now and again. And that's powerful in building that trust, building that connection with your team to hear you say, hey guys, I'm sorry, I pushed this project too hard, too fast. It's no wonder we're all not on the same page, like my fault, right? Is there anything you need to take ownership that might kind of ease any tension or what? So those are my five kind of questions that bring in to me kind of that connection, feelings, culture piece that are often good to just kind of think about from time to time. So any questions with that? Anything I'm missing? I'm sure I know I'm missing a lot. But I'm keeping this to kind of a quick 30-minute webinar because I know we all don't need another hour meeting on our calendar just because. So any last thoughts, questions, leave them in the chat. And then lastly, I'm going to leave you with three final questions to think on. So if you wanted to be overwhelmed with reflection in this webinar, hopefully I provided it for you. So lastly, the three questions to think on if you kind of missed everything else and you're like, too many questions, Michaela. This just tell me how to do a great meeting already. I'm, whatever. But the three things to think about is who do you consistently communicate with? And is that the right people for the right amount of time? Second is what information do you need to give and receive regularly? So not only who do you need to meet with, but like what information needs to be going to your people and do you need to receive from your people on a constant, probably consistent basis? That's kind of an easy way to think about it. And then lastly, in light of the who and the what, who do you need to see and kind of keep tabs on regularly? What information do you need to give and receive regularly? And then lastly, in light of that, what is a cadence or consistency that would work well for them and me moving forward? So that's like kind of to me in a nutshell of just the quick, how do I put the right meetings on my calendar with the results that I want? I think that's a good kind of way to work those three questions is, would this get me the results I want in terms of communication, in terms of feedback, in terms of getting them hopefully maybe to the place I want them at? So kind of some different things hopefully to think about for meetings because I know there's already a lot of great content out there. Some I can send you myself that I have teams go through. Please, if I send this out, if you have any further questions or thoughts or other things you'd love covered, resources, information, I can send you what I have and go from there. But hopefully some good evaluation, reflection, things to ponder, what meeting you enjoy the most, the least, and go from there. So thank you all for diving in, and until next time, we'll go from there. Thanks, guys.